Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are all doing very well today. I'd like to take this opportunity, if I may, to answer a viewer question. I received this viewer question a few months back, and I have to apologize for the lateness of my reply. It's not for any kind of forgetfulness on my part. Please rest assured that's not the case. But it's just a matter of trying to formulate my opinions and response in my head, and it usually takes a little bit of time depending on the nature of the question. So I really apologize for the lateness of this reply, so I hope you can forgive me. The question is from I, and the question that I presented was, I would love to know your opinion about Criterion being only in the US and the UK. In other words, I think the question, as I understand it, is asking how I feel about Criterion only being available in the US and UK and not being available, for instance, officially speaking anyway, in Japan, where I am currently finding myself. So this is a very interesting question, right? Because yes, as a person living in Japan and also being a Criterion Collection fan, I have to find ways in order to be able to scratch the Criterion itch that I have, so to speak. And I'm unable to do so through, let's say, going to a bookstore or DVD store and buying a Criterion through a DVD store here. It's not the case because Criterion does not sell its product here in Japan. So for instance, there are no Barnes & Nobles here in Japan, and so I'm unable to go to a Barnes & Noble store and look at the shelves or something like that. I therefore do all of my purchases of Criterion Blu-rays and DVDs through Amazon US. Amazon US allows me to order Criterion Collection items, and they ship to Japan. So that's very useful for me. Of course, I have to pay a little bit extra in shipping costs, but the shipping time is usually not so much. I can expect perhaps about a week to 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks perhaps. But that's something that I'm used to, so I don't usually mind the wait time. Also, the shipping costs, while a little bit expensive, it's something that it's not so expensive, so I can reasonably shoulder that burden, as it were. So it's nothing that's too out of, how should I put it? It's not something that's too extraordinary or grossly extravagant or expensive from my point of view. So in other words, the overall price of a Criterion item plus the accompanying shipping fee is something that I feel is reasonable. So I'm okay with ordering through Amazon US. Also, I should point out that not all items that are available through Amazon US are able to be shipped to Japan. Sometimes there are delivery restrictions, and sometimes I'll find myself wanting to order, let's say, an item, maybe a non-Criterion item, and at the very end I'll find out that it's unable to be shipped to Japan for whatever reason. And so unfortunately that's the case for some items that I usually find on Amazon US. But for Criterion items, I find that I have never run into that issue so far. So knock on wood, that continues in the future. So that's how I am able to get my hands on Criterion items while living in Japan. I should mention also that I do not have the Criterion Channel streaming service because, officially speaking, the Criterion Collection does not offer the Criterion Channel in the country where I'm living in right now, which is Japan. Also, there are some certain things that I'm still getting used to as far as watching films on streaming. That's a slightly different issue, but as far as Criterion's offerings are concerned, yes, I do make my purchases of physical media, Criterion Collection, Blu-rays and DVDs, most of the time through Amazon US. Now, occasionally, I do manage to find some Criterion titles that are offered on sale through auction sites here in Japan. It's a very interesting, it's a small pocket of sellers, but there are some sellers in Japan that will sell secondhand items, amongst which being, for instance, Criterion collection items. And so sometimes one might be able to find a used Criterion set of something and purchase it through the online site here in Japan. I'm fortunate that way because most of the time those online sellers through this website won't be willing to sell to anyone or to ship to anywhere outside of Japan, for instance. So I'm fortunate that way. And I do admit that I have been able to find a number of, let's say, bargains that I was very fortunate to come across. I did find some OOP items through Yahoo Auction, for instance, which is a Japanese auction website. And I found certain OOP items that would go for a lot of money in North America, but that I was able to find relatively inexpensively here in Japan. And the same is true also for sort of used stores, specialty stores in Tokyo. I'm able to go to some of these stores and find used Criterion discs, Blu-ray discs, because the Blu-ray region in Japan is the same as that of the United States, and so there's a lot of crossover. And there is a certain market for US Blu-rays here in Japan, at least amongst cinema aficionados and people who are fans of cinema. The Criterion collection isn't something that is, I would say, unknown. I would say that there are a number of people who know of the Criterion collection here in Japan, so it's not in any way an unknown factor. But it's not as prevalent as one might find it, say, in the United States, for obvious reasons. But what was I saying? So yes, there is a certain element here, in Tokyo at least, where some people do know of the Criterion collection, and some people do have Criterions for sale that are previously owned items or something. So there are opportunities for finding, let's say, bargains. I do know of a friend of mine who lives in Tokyo, for instance, who was able to find very cheaply a Blu-ray of Chungking Express, for instance. I was able also to find a Blu-ray of The Man Who Fell to Earth, the Criterion release, for relatively inexpensively in a used Blu-ray store here in Tokyo. I remember it must have been about approximately maybe $20 to $30 US. So it was in great condition. So I was very fortunate like that. So, but these aren't very frequent. But once in a while, one might find a bargain of that sort. But that's more of the exception rather than the norm. I would say the norm is more just having to purchase things online, not necessarily having the luxury of being able to look at a disc in the store before purchasing it. Also, there's a thing about shipping. Shipping can be a bit of a suspenseful thing in and of itself, because these discs are sometimes in digipacks or other times in the plastic Scanovo case. And shipping is not always a smooth matter, as some of you may know. Sometimes there can be minor accidents along the way, or maybe weight concerns might compress a certain package, which might cause maybe creasing or folding of the corners, or dents, or sometimes even cracks on the plastic cases. And so I've had my fair share of those. The discs usually have been intact, although I've had a number of occasions where the discs have actually themselves been damaged or cracked or bent or something like that. In those instances, I'll either return the item or otherwise get a refund of some sort. But for any other instance, for instance, a digipack that has a crease along the spine, or maybe a dent in the corner, or maybe even a cracked plastic case, I am okay with that. And the reason is that it's for me, it's a little bit more of a hassle to deal with having to return something like that rather than just take it in. it's because the disc is still playable and the leaflet or the booklet is still readable, and I don't have any future plans of reselling these anytime soon. And as far as the plastic casing is concerned, if the plastic case is cracked, I can very easily replace the case with a fresh case, and so I don't mind cracked plastic cases like that. And digipacks too, if the corners are bent or something, that's just par for the course, as it were, and so I don't mind those. I do understand, of course, that there is a collector kind of instinct when it comes to these items and the Criterion Collection items in particular, and so I know that a lot of people who are Criterion Collection fans will be very insistent on having the best possible condition product prior to purchase, and I really admire that and appreciate that. I just find myself in a position where I'm unable to make those sorts of choices, and so long ago I sort of I made myself become used to that, because that's also one of the norms, as it were, in terms of having to rely upon online purchases that are shipped overseas or from overseas. So that's just part of the process, as it were. As long as the disc is not damaged, then I'm usually okay with receiving something that even roughed up a bit. So it's part I'll get items that are in really good condition. So it's not usually the case that I'll get something that is pretty roughed up. But once in a while, or maybe fairly frequently, I'll get something that's a little bit banged up. But as long as the disc is okay and I can read the inserts and stuff, I'm usually okay. I think for me the biggest thing that I really hope that Criterion might be able to change one day is the fact that the Criterion web store, as of the time of this recording anyway, does not ship to Japan. It does not ship to Japan. I am unable, therefore, to make any direct purchases through the Criterion Collection website store. This is, on the one hand, I think I can understand this because, as I say, Criterion, officially speaking, does not market its products outside of, let's say, North America. It certainly doesn't market their product here in Japan. So I can understand the reasoning behind not allowing shipments to be made to, for instance, where I live, which is Tokyo. However, I should point out that, for instance, Arrow Video ships to Japan. I think Powerhouse Indicator ships to Japan. Eureka Masters of Cinema ships to Japan. So these other labels ship to Japan, and oftentimes there might be a shipping price, but that's fine. I completely understand that that's not unreasonable. Criterion is the only label that, for whatever reason, does not ship to Japan. So I wish that could change. I really do. I think that that's something that I find a little bit, if they could change that, that would be nice. Even if it were for, let's say, a portion of their items. I can probably understand the reasoning behind that, with respect to DVDs and Blu-rays, for instance. But at the same time, there are non-DVD, non-Blu-ray items that are available through the Criterion store, right? For instance, the postcards or the mugs or the T-shirts or something like that. And so it would be nice to be able at least to maybe have at least the opportunity perhaps to purchase those. It would also be nice to do so because, as you know, Criterion has flash sales, and because I am unable to order through the Criterion website directly, I'm unable, therefore, to avail myself the sales when they do occur. Of course, I'm very happy to hear news from people, my friends, who say they've purchased things from the flash sale and they've got this stack of discs, or they got this item there. That's great news. I'm always happy to hear that news, of course. But for me personally, I am unable to make any purchases through the Criterion web store. So that is a little bit of, before I must admit I was a little bit, I found that to be a little bit unfortunate, but now I'm used to it. And so that's all to say that I rely almost entirely on Amazon US. And as far as my experiences go, I have had no issues with Amazon US thus far. And so that's my experience now. And I have to pay a little bit extra in shipping, but I find it's reasonable, and I don't have to worry about issues of damage, because for the most part Amazon's shipping has been more or less reliable, except for the minor wear and tear issues that I alluded to earlier. So that's the situation that I find myself in as a Criterion fan here in Japan. And of course, do I hope it might change in the future? Of course I do. But I've already gotten used to it by now. It's my choice. I mean, I don't have to purchase Criterions. There's nothing that makes me have to, or forces me to have to purchase, use my money in a way to purchase Criterions. I mean, this is all my own volition. It's my own choice. I appreciate that. So, so that's my, so I still, despite these sort of minor concerns or minor issues, I still enjoy purchasing Criterions. Who knows, in the future, if things occur, maybe Amazon spikes its shipping rates up for whatever reason, or some other issue comes up, and it becomes it becomes a bit of an unreasonable position, financially speaking, to continue making these purchases, and there are no other alternative avenues available at my disposal, then perhaps at that point in time I will consider whether or not it's feasible to continue with my purchases of Criterion discs. But as of right now, I see no major issue like that as far as my own personal position and situation is. So I count myself rather fortunate in that respect. So despite certain minor issues that I identify, I still find myself in a very fortunate position, and I realize that, and so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to still be able to watch all these great films from Criterion. And even with its current business model, I hope Criterion just keeps going on with what it does for many, many, many years to come. Even if it doesn't change one bit, even if it doesn't ship through its Criterion store to Tokyo or whatever, doesn't matter. As long as they keep doing what it is they're doing, for the most part, I'm happy with that, and Criterion will still get my support. So here's, fingers crossed that everything stays the same. Of course, I am realistic in that I know things can't stay the same forever, and certain external forces and financial situations and business pressures might compel it, as would with any company, might compel Criterion one day in the future to change its business model, maybe devote more of its resources to streaming and less to physical media, or something to that effect. There are certain predictors or predictions that say perhaps Blu-ray's days are numbered. I don't know. I'm perfectly willing to deal with that situation when the time comes. So, but in the meantime, of course, yes, I'm still supportive of Criterion, and I am able to enjoy Criterion in the way that I am able to in my current situation. It's not perfect, but I think it's the benefit certainly super outweighs any minor issues that I might otherwise face in my current situation. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, that's my response to the great question from Again, I apologize for the lateness of my reply. I hope you can forgive me. In the meantime, my friends, if you have any thoughts or comments, as always, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what it is you have to say, any particular issues that you face. I know that there are a number of viewers who are in other parts of the world. Maybe there are certain specific region maybe region-based issues that you have. If so, I'd love to hear your own particular situations. If you have a moment, it would be great to hear from you. Other than that, my friends, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. So until we meet again, my friends, cheers.